Welcome to this short video introduction of a tool I wrote called hostintel. I wrote this tool for a couple different reasons. First, it was a project in one of my graduate courses, and the second is I had a former coworker ask me to write a tool that, given an IP address, host name, or domain, will pull information from the internet about it. Basically like a host reputation type of tool. This is my GitHub page. On the right hand side here, it's just Keith J. Jones is the user and hostintel is the name of the tool. I try to give you as much information as possible, like the help screens and so forth. Tell you how to install it, tell you how to run it, give you some sample data sets, a small host set and a larger host set. And then I tell you different intelligence sources. So basically when you hand this tool, hostintel, an IP address or a list of IP addresses, it's going to go to a bunch of different intelligence sources and pull information from them. Some of them require network I/O, some of them require API keys. You can see the list of intelligence sources here, and I'm not going to go through every single one of them because they are probably familiar to most cybersecurity professionals. The one I will note though is, well, you have your API keys that you can get at all these different websites that I linked, but the one I will note is Passive Total's API key. If you get the free one, is very limited. So just know that running this tool on Passive Total information, it's going to be a very short amount of information before you break the rate limits, which is only a few lookups a day. If you have a corporate key or something like that, it could be a lot more useful to you. So this tool, I wrote it with 5 different goals. And the first goal is I want it to be useful. And like I said when I started, this tool is actually being used on active investigations today. There's been thousands of IP addresses run through it in order to look for bad IP addresses for investigations that are going on. I want it to run on any operating system, so I wrote it in Python. So it can run on Mac, like you see me running here. We've also used it on Windows during those investigations, and it's run exactly the same way. I want it to be modular and simple to extend. Basically, if someone were to come to me with a new threat source or a threat intel source, I can easily add a module, which is just a class in Python speak, add a new module to it in order to add a new data source very easily. I want it to be free, so my source is open source. It's Creative Commons attribution, share alike license, but I also wanted to query as many free resources as I could find on the internet. And then I want the output to be useful anywhere. So one of the ways you could do that is by outputting all your data into a CSV file. A CSV file, which is comma separated values, will allow you to take your data and import it into something like Excel or bigger databases, and then you can make charts out of it, tables and so forth, and cut and paste it and put it into a nice report document. These notes that you see on the screen I actually put in the repository as well under the notes subdirectory, but I just hand drew some notes here for you to show you what it is this tool does. So there's one script called hostintel.py. What it does is when it's run, it goes out, gets your configuration file, and your configuration file, I'll show you a sample one. All it does is it has the different services, and that's where you put your usernames and API keys that are required for the different services. So once it reads its configuration file, then it reads a host file, which is just a file full of IP addresses and host names and domains. And then it calls a module for each different intelligence source that it wants to query. So for instance, here I had virus total or passive total, ... meaning you can have arbitrary amount of them, all the way up to question mark. And the reason why I put question mark in there is you could have a new source. It could be like keithcybersecurityinfo.com. And as long as you write a module for it, you can then go out and query that and pull the information down into hostintel. One thing I didn't put on here is this tool will then export what you have into CSV. So this CSV file is what you're gonna put into Excel or your database or so forth. And what I did over here is I showed you the help screen, and then I showed you how it went through the IP addresses of the small data set. And again, this data set is under sample data. You have a larger list and a smaller list. And if you don't want to install and run the tool, I even gave you the output of all the modules in there, so you can look at that in Excel. And once it's done, you just open it up in Excel. So let's go ahead and take a look at output.csv. First thing you do is you grab it, auto width. And as you can see, I'm not going to go through every column for you just to keep this video short, but if there's information in these services, it then outputs it into the CSV for you. Some of these spots look like there's nothing there. That's not really the fault of the script. It's just the fact that the service didn't return any information about that particular query. You can see there's a lot of information in here. So if I scroll all the way over to the end, see we go to column DX, which that's a whole lot of columns. Just to give you another example, here's the larger data set. As you can see with the larger IP list, still gives you a ton of data to look at. So you can grep, database, Excel, sort, filter, make pretty. You can basically slice this data however you want once you've got all the information pulled using a tool like hostinfo. A couple other things I want to mention. I've run this on Windows and Mac. Sometimes there's a difference in carriage returns. I did give you an option to turn on carriage returns in case you want it. You should need it, but in case you want it, there it is. To install and run this, you need Python and Git, both installed in your path. And hopefully if you installed Python, you also have pip. Pip is just the package manager for Python. I also added a contributing document. So if you feel like you want to add a intelligence source, here's an outline of how you go about doing that. You only need to make 2 functions in a class, and I tell you what each function does. And lastly, in the library, the libs, I created a skeleton.py, and this is just a skeleton for a new data source. So if you wanted to create a new data source, you could actually just take the skeleton, copy it over, and edit it up. And you can look at my other data sources as just as an example. All the resources that I used, all libraries, all foundation for DNS lookups and all that is all listed on my GitHub page as well. If you find a bug, I try to pop out debugging information for you. Go ahead and cut and paste it and stick it in an issue. And if you create a new issue, I'll try to squash the bug for you. I think I've done as much bug hunting as I can, but you never know when APIs change and so forth. Things have to be tweaked. With that, that's really all I have to say about this. If you have any comments, questions, or any suggestions, feel free to go ahead and contact me. I do stay up on my GitHub stuff, so if you put something in GitHub, like for instance, if you make a new data source, do a contribution and send me a pull request, I will look at it, and if it matches with the code, I'll merge it together. That's all I have. Thank you for watching, and have fun with the tool.